Welcome to the TLMI Lunch and Learn series. This time we're featuring our platinum sponsor, Baldwin, who sponsored us for 2024. I'm Dale Coates. I'm Vice President of Member Operations and Engagement for TLMI. So I'm your first stop for questions, the customer service kind of things, anything about your membership. Just feel free to connect with me. Happy to help you with any of those things. And I am pleased to introduce to you John Cusack from Baldwin. He's the product line manager for inspection, color, and register at Baldwin. He's specializing in development of inspection, color management, and data systems. He has 25 years of experience in the print industry. In his current role, he's helping drive maximum utilization of Baldwin technologies through simplification and automation to unlock your business's potential. As you've guessed already by the accent, some of you, John is from Ireland. He lives there with his wife, Margaret, and their 3 children. And thank you, John, for being here. Thanks for staying after your hours. If you don't notice, John and I are desk standers. So if you have been sitting at your desk already for a while this morning and you want to join us and take a break, feel free to stand up, stroll around, listen to the presentation. And I'm going to turn my camera off and turn it over to you, John.
Thank you very much, Dale. Yeah, hi guys. Yeah, also a Liverpool supporter for those who care. I stand up because I'm taller standing than I am sitting. It's a very close, but just about taller standing. Okay, so I won't delay everybody. Again, be mindful of people's time. So I'm here today really to talk about an inspection platform we've got, which is called the Guardian PQV, so Print Quality Verification System. And our concept for this webinar is the idea of doing more with less. And that can be a lot of different things. In the case of this presentation, it's more about trying to get the most out of an inspection system while taking the least amount of time, for your operators, busy schedule, right? So operators have to do a lot of different things. They can't babysit inspection systems. So systems like, the Guardian PQV need to be sort of almost autonomous and kind of automated and do their own thing and only alert the operator when issues arise and issues that the operator wants to have to deal with. Okay, so we'll get into it here. The basic outline is I'm just going to briefly say who Baldwin is, and then we'll talk about sort of what I think are users' priorities for this type of inspection system. And then we'll talk a little bit about the actual PQV, how it's set up, and the tools that are highly automated to kind of, as I said, get the most out of an inspection system while using the least amount of your operator's time to do so. And then we'll talk a little bit about sort of the PQV workflow. So again, all of these inspection systems on the market, like the PQV, also have the ability to not just find defects and inform operators in real time so that they can take corrective action, but they also can store information in the database, and you can use that information for tracking defects through the workflow and removing, even down to individual labels, so that you can ensure that your outgoing quality for your customers is, as required. Okay, so a little bit about Baldwin. I think the big thing to kind of mention about Baldwin is really sort of the history, and just the experience that we've got for the industry. So again, TLMI members are probably most familiar with a company called PC Industries, or maybe Verification Systems Limited. So these are, a couple of the companies that have come together to form, our inspection platforms under the Baldwin umbrella. So we've got a huge amount of experience across many different types of print industries and different inspection platforms that we've sort of merged and over time just brought the best out of all of the systems that we have available to us. So then getting into what are your priorities, question mark. Okay, I'm sure everybody has a particular reason to be on the call here today. I want to just list a few things that I feel are priorities for printers like yourselves. One is simplification, and I'm going to spend most of my time talking about simplification, so I'll come back to that one. Then risk mitigation, right? So everybody, is interested in having quality control tools or inspection systems or, other, technologies to ensure that your quality needs are met, because you obviously want to deliver a certain standard for your customers, and therefore tools like the PQV 100% inspection technology can help mitigate risk of sending bad product into the marketplace. Improve quality, again, all interwoven, tied together, right? If you're improving your quality, you're managing your risk. So, another key potential priority for you as a printer. And then sustainability. And I put up sustainability. It's a nice buzzword. It can also be, one side of a coin that, is also related to sort of business sustainability. So profitability and managing your costs, right? Because, if you've got systems that are able to ensure that your quality levels are high, to give you early warnings about issues as they arise in production, that helps you minimize the amount of waste you're producing. So it saves material, it saves ink, it saves time, and it actually can improve the utilization of your equipment so that you can ultimately be a more profitable business, right? So it's probably all of those and probably some other items as well that I haven't listed here that you probably are thinking about. But as I said, the one I want to try to focus on is simplification. And the reason I want to focus on simplification is that especially when it comes to inspection technology, they can be quite complex. They have a lot of intelligence under the hood, a lot of algorithms that are used to do print inspection. And one of the biggest issues that we've found over the years is that you can have an inspection system that has lots of features, but in practice, because those features can be very, very complex to set up or to use, they don't get used. And as a result, you may have paid for features and functionalities that in practice you don't actually use because they're just too complex. So the idea here with a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is how we simplify the use case for the operator. And by simplifying the use case for the operator, what we end up doing is making a product that is easy to use. It's engaging for the operator. It's something that they want to use because it will provide them feedback that is feedback they need to know in order to maintain the processes. And it also is sort of symptomatic, if you like, of our kind of drive to automate a lot of our systems. So we'll see here in a little bit that I'm going to talk about some of these features that are probably more advanced features like Delta E color monitoring or barcode grading, and just how they can be difficult to use in some systems, but if you have the ability to automate how those features work and minimize the amount of interaction the operator needs to take to set the systems up, they get used very effectively, and you get the best out of the inspection system. Okay, so we'll talk about the PQV, so print quality verification. So again, it's about trying to simplify something that is probably advanced or maybe conceptually daunting for an operator to wrap their head around. So what we want to be able to do is just make it very, very easy to use. So how do we do that? We have a very simple wizard setup. So there's simply a single form where you enter a couple of basic pieces of information, like how big is your label, how many lanes or how many labels across you've got on the web, and then you have to choose a sensitivity level and a lighting preset. So your sensitivity level is something that can be pre-configured. So if you have a quality system whereby every job has to meet the same level of quality, so minimum defect size is a certain value, the maximum color variation is a certain value, you can have a default setting that is used on every job, and you get consistency, repeatability, predictability, and you're done. But if you have a mix of product and you need to be able to have maybe as simply as something like a low, medium, and a higher level of sensitivity, depending on the type of customer you're printing for, those are sensitivity presets that can be included in the recipe. And we can even, like it's kind of shown here, you can have a customer sensitivity. So if you have a specific customer that might be extremely demanding, you can create a sensitivity that's specific to their needs and then use that on their product. Okay, and then the lighting presets, again, depending on what lighting you need, what substrates that you print on. So if you do like a complex mix of substrates like paper, transparent films, maybe even some metallic elements, you'll have different types of lighting presets that you need to apply. And the nice thing about the presets, again, is that they're optimized depending on the substrate. So those presets can be labeled as clear material, paper, foil, whatever is required to make it as easy for the operator to select the appropriate setting. And then the other two things that we put into this training wizard are probably the most commonly used advanced features of these types of inspection systems for label printing. So we've got the barcode decoding and grading feature, and then we've got the auto delta E color monitoring feature. So the idea here is that they can be turned on by default. You can select to decode or grade a barcode, and then you can also have a default grade value. And the nice thing about having these tools in the system and having preset values is you don't have to touch anything. You just simply hit the continue button, and the appropriate barcode grade values and the appropriate delta E tolerance are automatically fed into the system, and the operator needs to make no adjustments. So really what you get is that single point setup. You get an automated delta E color monitoring, which I'm going to get into a bit more detail here in a second. You've the auto barcode verification, and then with this other feature that we have, which is sort of a unique feature for our product, which is called auto object inspection. All right. Now, I'm using auto here in a lot of cases because what I want to kind of get across here through this presentation is that, delta E color monitoring, selecting locations to measure color, tolerances for color, having appropriate locations to measure color can be complex. And there are lots of systems on the market that allow operators to go and select a location, say, I want to measure color here, and I want to set the color tolerance to a certain delta E value. They are time consuming to set up. They require the operator to understand how to select a valid color measurement location. So, a simple example would be that, you can't measure color in a text area or a barcode, right? You need to have a minimum area of uniform color so that you can measure, in a valid way, right? And meeting, ISO standards. So if you had an offline process where you're using a handheld measurement device, spectrophotometer, to measure color patches, that know-how needs to be known by the operator if you've got to select those locations manually in our system. But in our case, you don't have to do that. And I'll explain that a little bit later. So a lot of automation. I'm just going to go through some of those details here now. Okay. So we'll start off with the barcode verification. So again, as I mentioned, everything's automated. What does that mean? What that means is if I just kind of point to this area here on the user interface. So in this area here, just inside this red box, we've got a number of different types of codes. And what the PQV can do is it can take a picture of the web of every label, and it can find every barcode, linear, 2D, QR, whatever type of code that it is, and it can recognize it, classify it by its type, it can decode it, and it can grade it all automatically. Operators don't have to tell the PQV what barcodes are out there, what type of barcode, or where they are. It does it all itself. All you've got to do is select the grade level that you want to measure to. So what is the warning level where if I'm not getting a grade above that value, let the operator know. Okay, so if I just blow that up here, you'll see that, in this case, there's 3 different code types that have been automatically identified. And that little green box around each of those codes says, I've got that barcode, I've decoded it successfully, and the grade value passes the grade threshold. Okay, there's nothing the operator has had to do except start the job. Okay, then I'm going to move into the auto delta E color monitoring. So this is probably the most powerful version of being able to measure color of any system that's available in the market today. And the reason it's so powerful is that rather than asking the operator to say, where would you like to measure color? Do you want to measure color in location A, location B, location C? The PQV is able to take the image, and it is able to actually analyze the entire image area and find every valid location where color measurement can be done. Okay, so that literally translates into typically thousands of measurement locations. So in the example that we've got here, again, if I just blow up one area here where that red box is, you'll see that in this area here, we've got the Baldwin red logo here, okay? And when the color is off, what happens is the PQV will detect the area where the color is bad, and it will put a box around every individual element where the color is incorrect. So again, if I just kind of point it out in a little bit more detail, the PQV is able to identify every error location automatically. So if you can imagine an operator that doesn't need to understand how to select color locations, and then that operator doesn't need to take any time to find a location, that makes it very, very simple to use. It makes it very, very quick to set up, and it makes the result very, very predictable and repeatable because it's all done automatically. So the system can find every location within the image that can be measured for color variation, and then it will check the delta E value of every location in real time, and any location that exceeds the delta E tolerance that is a sort of a default value that can be adjusted by the operator. But if they choose a sensitivity, like I mentioned at the beginning, let's say you've customer A, their requirement is delta E tolerance of X. As long as you choose that sensitivity file, that's the tolerance that gets applied, and everything else happens under the hood automatically and in milliseconds. So again, operator has to do nothing in this case. Okay, so the big benefit here is that rather than having to take time, pick a few different locations and measure maybe half a dozen points on the image, you can actually measure thousands of points, and it happens, like I said, in milliseconds. So now just get into the object inspection. And again, this is sort of something that's unique to the PQV product. And this is sort of something that's extremely important for people who do label printing, people who do print of a product that has a lot of content in it, whether it's a lot of words, a lot of codes, a lot of very, very small features that need to be inspected. And there are plenty of systems on the market that can do print inspection, and some of those are good at doing pretty pictures. Some of them are good at checking for color. But what the PQV absolutely excels in is its ability to check content and identify issues within the content. And how it does that is it uses an algorithm that is able to find objects within the image. So when I mean objects, I'm just going to roll this on here, and it's difficult to see on that label. So I'm just going to blow up a section here again, that little red rectangle. I'm going to blow that up for you. So what we see here is just part of the label, and it's got some directions, an important note, caution, and again, it's a lot of content, a lot of letters, a lot of words. It might be information about the dosage, how much of this particular medicine you're supposed to be able to take. Some things that are really, really critical not to get wrong. Yep. So what the PQV does is, again, this is an automatic step. When you say, start the job, the PQV will train itself on the image of the label that it has. And if I just roll it on here, what you'll see is in this area, pretty much every individual letter within this information panel has been identified as a unique object. And what the PQV can do is it can track all of those objects independently of each other. So it doesn't matter if they're all printed using the same color, and they obviously would move in the same direction, but also if you have product where you've got multiple colors and all of those colors are moving independently of each other, right? So any print job has some register tolerance, right? Be it 0.1 of a millimeter, 0.2 of a millimeter, whatever it is, there is movement, and it's acceptable movement. And traditionally, inspection systems have had to build in a tolerance for that movement. Okay, so certain features can move with respect to each other features can't, because they're printed with the same color in the case of the text here. But because other inspection systems have to allow for that movement, what they do is they actually apply a very, very small tolerance around the position of all of the text. And what they're saying is this text is here right now, but it can move 0.1 of a millimeter this way, that way, the other way. And I have to be able to live with that movement because something else over here is going to be doing it. And I don't want to be alerting to register movements that are within tolerance, and therefore, it's good product. So that weakens most systems' ability to see content issues. So if you get a missing period on a sentence, or a dot over an I, or like I said, a period where you've got some dosage information that really changes the value of the dose that you need to take, that's obviously super critical. And our product is able to basically track every individual letter on the label, and as that moves around, it applies essentially a zero tolerance to its position, because it's tracking every object, even if there are literally thousands of objects. If this was a book that had a full, flood code of letters, the PQV can track every letter independently. So if anything goes wrong with any individual letter, the PQV can find it. Okay, so that's a super powerful tool that we've got. And then, just to kind of go into some of the defect detection capabilities, just kind of run through a couple of examples of the types of defects that the PQV can detect. Again, copy error is a big one, filled in text, these are the types of defects, or even that smear in the supplement text. Those small defects that happen within the content, they are usually the very, very critical defects, but they're also extremely difficult to detect. Things like hickeys or little ink splashes in nice quiet areas, everybody can detect them all day long, but they're not critical usually. So again, the power is in the ability to look at the content very, very closely, and then to identify any issues within the content areas. Okay. So to kind of summarize just this concept of simplicity, I'm talking about complex things like object-based inspection, delta E, color monitoring, barcode grading. But in terms of how the system is used, you simply enter the label dimensions, the number of labels you have, select the sensitivity file and the lighting recipe, and then hit go. That's all the operator has to do. And what happens then is the PQV finds all the barcodes, it identifies them, it decodes and grades them. It will find thousands of areas to measure color to whatever tolerance you set the sensitivity file, and then it just happily does its job. And whenever there is a critical issue, it makes that known to the operator so the operator can take action. So again, it's extremely quick to set up. It is very, very repeatable and predictable because you're not relying on an operator to decide where they want to measure color, or to make sure that they select the right barcode to check the code. It just does the same thing no matter who the user is. So you have that consistency and predictability with the product. Just some examples then of where the PQV typically gets applied. So obviously on web presses, on rewinders. So again, it has functionalities to do inspection even on rewinders. So you can have the ability to funnel particular high priority jobs through a particular finishing machine. So you just inspect that product. So you're not necessarily inspecting on the printing press. And the idea there is that you can detect a defect, slow down, stop, even back the defect up to a particular location where the operator can take that defective label out, put a good label in, and then that new label can be re-inspected to confirm it's being positioned correctly, and it has no defects itself. So there's really the potential here to deliver zero defect output for your customers. The PQV is also used on sheet transport lines for security applications. That's something I didn't really mention at the beginning, is that it is a really powerful content type tool. So it's used a lot of cases in security applications, like currency. And then obviously, because of its, kind of content driven and automated capabilities, it's becoming extremely powerful tool for digital applications as well. And we know that with digital presses comes a lot of variable content and variable data in particular. And again, that's one area where the PQV is extremely good as well, because at its core, it's able to find codes, decode codes, it's able to look at data strings, and it's able to understand exactly what they are, but it's also able to compare all of those parameters against a variable set of information. So if you have a file that says I'm going to print 20,000 different codes, the PQV can check all those individual codes and confirm them back against the database of codes to make sure everything has been printed correctly. And if some codes are defective, to let you know which codes are defective so you can organize to reprint those. And then that sort of takes me into that workflow. Then this is the last piece I just want to touch on. And again, the idea here is that in a lot of cases with an inspection system, you've got actionable information in real time so that you can address issues and minimize the amount of waste you create. And that's great. That limits, the bad stuff that gets into your system. But then there's a lot of cases where there's bad stuff in your system that you still have to get out. So again, the PQV workflow has kind of 3 key steps along the way to doing that. And the idea here is that we say, okay, you can deliver defect-free, perfect print quality to the brand owner. Yes, you can, but you can also make, strategic or tactical probably decisions around, Sometimes there's a certain amount of waste that's acceptable, a certain type of defect that's acceptable. So we give you all of the information to make the right decisions, in the moment. All right. So the PQV on the printing press is doing that early warning so that you can, address issues in real time, but it's also creating defect maps. So in the user interface here, you'll see on the right-hand side, we've got a color-coded map that's showing you 4 lanes of labels, and it's showing you defective labels, and it's showing you things that are out of tolerance, which are the red guys. It's showing you a yellow, which is a sort of a background. So if you get a little hickey or a little ink splash, let's say in the cleaner paper area, probably not critical, probably something that you would pass. So it's color coded a little bit differently. And we also have 2 examples here of 2 repeating defects. So again, we use a sort of an orange color, slightly brighter color to say, okay, this is a defect that is occurring in the same location and it's not going away. So ideally, the operator deals with that quickly because that's a high priority item on the press. But once they've dealt with it, you still need to be able to see where that is in the roll map so that you can manage that waste in finishing, because that's probably a very good place to stop, to take out waste, because it's probably a very high density area of material where a lot of defects could be removed. So how do you do that? Well, like I said, you've got these defect maps which show you lanes of labels and they show you defect events. And then all of that information goes into a defect database. And the other nice thing about the PQV workflow is it really is like the same interface throughout the workflow. So whether you're using the PQV on press as a printer and you're doing inspection, or whether you're actually looking at the maps maybe in the QA department, or maybe it's happening at the rewinder, you get almost an identical user interface where you can pull up a roll map and you can click on individual defects and you can see what they are, and then you can make decisions about what needs to come out. But when you make those decisions, you need to be able to action those decisions, right? So right now you're making decisions that are sort of electronically flagging areas of material to be removed. But that edited defect map then has to be dealt with, right? So in finishing, we have a converting controller. So again, from the user's perspective, essentially identical to the other products, in that you can load up the map that has now been edited. So you'll see in this map, a number of defects have been accepted by the user. Pretty much every random defect has now been marked as a okay, or, but we also make sure that any decision is not lost. So the user can't, just remove a defect from history and make it go away. They can make decisions to say, I'm going to accept the defect, but that decision is recorded. Every defect that's detected is still available in the database, so you always have that traceability. But in this example here, we've got 2 areas, like I mentioned, where we've got repeating defects, and in that case, those repeating areas are going to be removed. So what happens then in the finishing is that we use a device that is measuring the distance and counting labels from the start of the roll up to the beginning of the first label and that first sequence of defective labels. And we slow down and stop the machine and put that first label, on a predetermined location on that machine. And again, it's very configurable. All these rewinding machines can be very, different in their configuration, their lengths, and what have you. So we can tune or configure the converting controller to make sure that each label is put in a location where the operator traditionally is able to deal with those labels, whether it's to cut out a section of web or whether it's to replace an individual defect. All that is in the workflow. And that allows you to ultimately get to a commercially acceptable output. Like I mentioned, that can be defect free, okay? Particularly if you're talking about security or, high-end pharmaceutical applications, that is often the requirement. But if you are doing general label printing, or have customers that have lower quality demands, and they're willing to live with certain issues, that you obviously can detect and track and make sure you're documenting your decisions. But if certain defects are acceptable to the customer, then obviously you can ship that material. And that brings me to the end of my ramble. So I'm going to stop talking, and I guess I'll open it up for any questions that anybody might have.
Yeah, and if you have questions, you can just type those into either the chat or the Q&A, and I can read those off to help John out a little bit. But thank you, John. We really appreciate you being here and spending some time talking to us about this fantastic product. So you guys don't be shy. I have one question already, so I'll just pitch that to you.
Yeah.
Says most other systems on the market offer delta E color measuring and barcode grading. How is yours better for a company to use?
Yeah, so it comes down to sort of we don't want to just check boxes. So, like I guess the question goes that, I think everybody has a Delta E color tool. Everybody has the ability to grade barcodes. But I guess what sets us apart is the fact that it's highly automated. As I mentioned at the beginning, I think one of the biggest issues for this type of technology that we offer inspection systems is that they're not really utilized in the way that they're sold a lot of times. You can spend a lot of money buying lots of complicated features to do very, very complex things. There's many other things that PQB can do as well. But when it comes to the actual, implementation of those features, what we've learned is that if you require the operator to make decisions, to interact quite frequently with the system, to choose locations, to measure color, or to identify barcodes, it's extremely time consuming. It is something that is very prone to error. It is something that requires a certain level of skill from the operator, and ultimately is very inconsistent. So it's kind of go back to the beginning of this idea of doing more with less. We like to think, and we're pretty sure that our customers use those advanced features all the time because there's no extra effort in putting them into play. They just work, they just do what they need to do, and they inform the operator when those issues occur. So again, it's down to sort of automation and simplicity. So you get not just using the tools all the time, but like I mentioned with the Delta E tool, it is able to find so many locations to measure color. It's so comprehensive in how it actually measures color. It's measuring thousands of locations versus other systems that require the user to select, a handful, a dozen, maybe even if it took 2 or 3 minutes and to pick 50 locations. It's 50 locations versus thousands. There's just no comparison.
That's great. We have a question about where the product is made. Is this made in the USA, and is it also supported out of the USA? Since we know you're in Ireland
absolutely
today.
Yeah, we don't make it in Ireland. No, it's made out of Fairfield, Illinois. So just a few hours south of Chicago. So it is, again, like I mentioned, the legacy of PC Industries, which again was sort of in the same area in the Chicago area. So this is very much an American-made product, and it is supported by plenty of US service technicians as well.
Fantastic. Nothing against Ireland, of course.
No.
So how accurate is your workflow, and can it find an individual defect is another question that's come in.
Okay. Yeah, so the system, it's designed to support sort of a zero defect scenario, right? So like I mentioned, we sell a lot into security applications or high-end pharmaceutical applications where, it really is a almost zero defect scenario. So we really have to be able to support finding an individual label, and that's what the PQB workflow can do. So if you have a roll of material and you've got thousands of labels in there, and one of them has a defect on it, we have the ability to go find that label in that roll in the rewinder at that converting controller, stop on that label, put it right where the operator needs to find it, so that they can take that out, ideally replace it and re-inspect it even if need be.
Fantastic. So this always comes up when we talk about products, but someone is asking about base cost. So
okay.
Where are you?
Yeah, so again, it sort of depends, right? So I would say, we start at probably around the $30,000 mark, and then, depending on the feature set that's required, depending on, the size of the application, it can go up from there. But definitely, sort of in the 30,000 bracket is definitely where it starts.
Okay. This is my question because I'm just curious, but What's a typical time for like setup and getting the system up and running for someone once you've done the installation?
Yeah, okay. So just to set up a job. Okay, so that little training wizard probably takes 20 to 30 seconds to set up. Um, and that wizard is sort of an iteration that we did on the product about a year and a half ago now, I think. And it was something that we did to kind of really kind of condense the amount of setup time that's involved. So it again, I'm kind of using our old generation of the product as an example, but in terms of clicks, we've taken setup of a system from, let's say, 80 clicks to 8 clicks. It's really kind of reduced it by a factor of 10 in terms of the setup. So yeah, it's super quick. And there are some things that can happen as well. Again, some features that are available that are a little bit more automated again in terms of the setup. So, like having the ability to accept a PDF file as a reference and pre-train on the PDF so that we know where all the objects exist, we know where all the labels are, and that can actually further speed up the setup. So it is very quick, very, very quick.
Someone's asked about the recording. So we are recording and we will be posting this in TLMI community, but because this is a lunch and learn from one of our platinum sponsors, we also just promote this widely on LinkedIn. So keep an eye out on our LinkedIn site and we'll be posting it there as well. If you didn't catch quite all of the presentation today or you want to share it with someone else. We've got another question
from Irish.
Yeah, I think everybody's good. It was fun. One other question that's come in is if you have an older system, is there an opportunity to upgrade to the latest version?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're running upgrade campaigns constantly. Yeah, there's upgrade paths for systems that are 2 generations old now. So systems that could be 8 to 10 years old are probably viable in terms of doing upgrades. So we're pretty flexible in terms of how we manage the upgrades. The scope of the upgrade changes depending obviously on the vintage of the machine. But in a lot of cases, there's a lot of hardware, even the camera lighting technology that can be maintained, and we're moving forward with new processing, new software, new displays like multi-touch displays and things like that. So there's definitely an upgrade path. We're always looking to get all of our users onto the latest and greatest.
Okay. Another question, what is the tightest delta E that you can set?
In practice, it's probably 2.5 delta E, and that really comes down to sort of a technological limitation on the cameras themselves. So, pretty much everybody in the industry of inspection is using RGB cameras, so they can be line scan cameras or contact image sensing devices. We do have some tricks in terms of how we optimize our systems to get, maybe just that little bit more out of it, because again, sort of the wider Baldwin portfolio of products, we actually do build spectrophotometers. We do have products that actively do color control based on spectral measurement, so sort of the commercial web offset space. And also in packaging applications for spectral measurement, like CI Flexo and Gravure and things like that. So we have a lot of color expertise, and we have sort of put that into our version of the 3-channel RGB sensor. So I think in terms of our sensitivity, we're easily as good as anybody else is offering this technology. But I hope just a little bit better.
Very good. What run speeds can be achieved when using the barcode scanner?
Yeah, that's probably a question I need to answer offline. That depends on this type of barcode and the size of the barcode and the camera that we're using and the field of view of the system. So there's a lot of variables in there. But typically, we've got 2 kind of core cameras that we use, like a 4K camera and an 8K camera, and we very, very rarely are not able to support measuring the barcodes that people that members of the TLMI or similar printers need to be able to grade. So it just comes down to understanding the specific application. We just need to know how fast you run, what width, and then what is the minimum bar weight or minimum element of the particular code that you need to grade or decode, and then we can specify the system to do the job.
Very good. Any other questions? You guys have been very interactive. We always appreciate that. It's more fun for the speaker to get some questions and know that there are people out there in the world other than me in my box, since we can't see
very
you.
good. Yeah.
So, any other questions that you'd like to send in? While you're thinking of them, I'm going to give you a couple quick TLMI announcements, and then if you have any last minute ones. So just hot off the press, the latest issue of the TLMI Market Insights Quarterly Report has been loaded to TLMI Community this morning. So that's your industry statistics for the first quarter of 2024 are there and available for you. If you are a TLMI Converter member, you should have received an email this morning with a survey link that is data that goes into that second quarter of Market Insights Quarterly. And it replaces our Market Watch survey that we've done in the past. So it's a quick survey, shouldn't take you too long to complete, but check your inboxes. The main contact at your company would have received that this morning if you're a converter member. And then just last little pitch, I think we have 3 spots left for the Label Leaders of Tomorrow event that's in July this summer. So check out TLMI.com's event page if you have somebody that's an up-and-coming leader in your organization and you'd like to connect them with that peer group for that excursion. So we're excited about that. We sold out last year and we are selling out very quickly again this year for that event. So very exciting. So any last questions before we let you run to lunch, or our West Coaster might be on coffee break and John might need dinner? I think we are good. Thank you so much again. Thanks for being here. Thanks to those of you who participated today and listened in. We will post the recording. And thank you to Baldwin for being one of our platinum sponsors again this year for TLMI. So everybody have a great day.